It's okay to be sad. Hey everybody, this is Pastor Justin Walker with The Whole Truth. We're going through the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation. We're not skipping anything, so grab a Bible, turn it open to Genesis chapter 23. Today is a bit of a sad story as we begin the story with the death of Sarah. We've seen a lot about Sarah and Abraham, at least the highlights of their life, and now we're going to see as Sarah passes. And even though it's a sad story, there's still plenty to learn, so I hope that you'll stick along with me through the entire video today. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, leave your comments down below, and share. It helps the video to go further, and we want to get as many people into God's Word as possible, so you can help to do that by leaving comments and sharing the video. Read along with me. Let's read the entire chapter. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. So she died at Kirjath Arba, which is that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abram came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Then Abraham stood up from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of burial places. None of us will withhold from you his burial place, that you may bury your dead. Then Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people and to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. And he spoke with them, saying, If it is your wish that I bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and meet with Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is at the end of his field. Let him give it to me for the full price of property for a burial place among you. Now Ephron dwelt among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the presence of the sons of Heth, all who entered at the gate of the city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the land. I give you the field and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of all the people of the land, saying, If you will give it, please hear me. I will give you money for the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? So bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. And so the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the trees that were in the field that were within all the surrounding borders, were deeded to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the sons of Heth, before all who went in at the gate of his city. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And so the field and the cave that is in it were deeded to Abraham by the sons of Heth as property for a burial place. Now, that was a mouthful, and I know I read the whole thing, but that's because I really just want to get to a few main points here. The number one being that this is the first time in the Bible, and the only time in the Bible, extremely rare, we see that the age of a woman was listed when she died. So she's 127 years old. You can find women listed in genealogies throughout the Bible, which is a rare thing for ancient texts. But to find a woman's death, to find her, not only that she's in the lineage or in the genealogy, but actually how long she lived, that she lived for 127 years. You can't find that anywhere else in the Bible. This is the only time that we see that. As a matter of fact, we see that Sarah was 127 years old, and Abraham came to mourn her death. In other words, they had a funeral. Okay, people came. He stands up. It says in verse 3 that Abraham stood up before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth. The sons of Heth had come, and they were there at the funeral. Abraham had brought Sarah to the place of the funeral. That's what we mean. That's what it means when we read that Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And so, the first thing I want to say to you is this: that regardless of your circumstance in life, make sure that you're living in a way that leaves an example. That's what we see today. We see Sarah leaving an example. We'll see the same of Abraham here in a moment. We see that Sarah left an example. You know, in the Bible, we never see Mary listed as someone to follow the example of. Now, that's not to say Mary wasn't highly favored. Don't come at me. Okay, I'm just saying that in the Bible, there, as a female, Sarah is listed twice as a woman of example. To use her as an example, you can find it in Isaiah. You can also find it in Peter. In the epistles that Peter wrote, you can find that Sarah was an example of righteousness among women. And so I'm saying to you that you ought to live your life in a way that supports that others regard you or see you as who you are in Christ, that they see you as righteous. Your life ought to be a reflection of that. Now, I would also say something else. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to mourn. I look here and I see that at the end of verse 2, Abraham came to mourn for Sarah, and he came to weep in front of everybody. Now, weeping is not a sign of weakness. Weeping is not a sign of lack of faith. Now, some of you right now are going to go, who would ever say such a thing? But I'm telling you, as a pastor, I was a youth pastor for 7 years. I've been a pastor for almost 9 years. As someone who's been in the ministry for almost 16 years of his life, I've been to a lot of funerals. I've preached a lot of funerals. I have seen and been around a lot of people I've been in the room when people have passed. I have seen the reactions of those around when someone passes. And I don't mean a few times. I think right now, off the top of my head, I could list at least 10 to 15 times I've been in the room when someone passes. And I am telling you, everyone deals with death in a different way. And you ought to let someone mourn in their own way. There really is no right or wrong way to tell somebody to mourn. And I have personally witnessed as someone was weeping. I remember once at a funeral, this woman was weeping loudly and she laid over the body on the casket. And there were people in the audience and they shook their heads. And I remember one old woman, she was sitting about 2 rows in front of me, and she leaned over and whispered loud enough that I could hear, "She's just doing that for attention." You don't know that. You don't know if somebody's doing it for attention or if their heart is just bleeding out, if they're just breaking. I've seen people I've seen balloons and candy at funerals. I've seen people try to celebrate. I've seen like music that you would just never, or heard music you would never expect at a funeral. But everybody mourns in a different way. And I would just say you ought to just let people mourn the way that they need to mourn. Let them get it out. You know, as long as they're not hurting somebody else or doing something sinful, I don't really think that we should try to stand in the place of telling someone how to mourn. And so what I'm saying to you is it's okay to be sad. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to weep. When we lose someone we love, it's okay to have emotions. That's a natural thing to have emotions. And we see that out of Abraham. But in the midst of his emotions, we see that he stands up and he says to the men of Heth, "Let me have some property." And he doesn't just mean let me have it. He says, "I will buy it for the purchase price." Now, this is a custom of the day, and I know that. You could read the commentators and hear that this is a custom of the day to go back and forth like this. However, I would point out that these men were genuinely telling Abraham, just take it. You can have any piece of property you want. Why would they say that? Well, do you remember with Abimelech? Abraham had made a deal with Abimelech. And the people were recognizing that Abraham was blessed by God, and they were recognizing that they wanted him in their land. And so Abraham is becoming favored among the people. They are recognizing him as a righteous man, favored by God, and they are offering him any land that he wants. But I want you to notice that even though they were so generous to say to have anything you want, Abraham names it. He had something in mind. He says, "I want the cave at Machpelah." Well, he says, "I'll pay full purchase price for it. Full purchase price for it. Go get Ephron and tell him." And so they get Ephron, and Ephron says, "No, you can have it." Abraham says, "I insist, I'll pay." Ephron says, "It's worth 400 shekels of silver," which is a lot of silver, okay? It was a high price for land. Even in that day, that was a high price for the field and for the cave. But Abraham, do you notice what Abraham did? Abraham went ahead and pulled out the silver, and he paid all 400 shekels of silver. He didn't even question it. You know, from one side, you've got Ephron saying, "What's 400 shekels of silver between me and you?" From the other side, Abram had the money to pay it, and so he did. You know, sometimes it's good to give with dignity. I remember the story of this man who he's walking through the market with his son, and there's this woman who is selling eggs. and she has her eggs for $3, and people are coming into the market and they're all haggling with her, and she's selling her eggs to one person for $1.50 and to another person for $2. And everybody's haggling with her over these eggs. And it's obvious that she's not wealthy. She's not well-to-do. She's sitting in the market selling eggs. And so the man walks up with his son, and he says, "I'd like to get a dozen eggs, and how much are they?" And she says, $3. And he says, "Well, I've only got a 5, but here, you can just keep the change." And he takes the eggs and he walks away. And his son said to him, he said, "Dad, why did you do that? Why everybody else was getting the eggs for $2 and $1.50? Why didn't you try to bargain her down?" And he taught his son this. He said, "Son, what you just saw was charity with dignity. I bought her eggs, and I gave her $5 for the eggs. What's $5 to me? I can afford the $5. He said, "But instead of just giving her a handout, she has the dignity. She sold me her eggs, and she got $5 out of it. It was charity with dignity." I think the same thing we see here. Abraham has been blessed upon blessed. The Lord is taking care of him. So what do we see Abraham doing? He pays the $400 the 400 shekels for the field. He pays the full price that was asked. He doesn't haggle about it. He doesn't try to get it down. He could afford it, and he knew that the other people in the land were probably not blessed as much as he was. They even called him a prince in this text. And so he paid what he could. I would encourage us to do the same thing. No wonder the people so highly favored and respected Abraham and Sarah. No wonder they were there mourning. Abraham calls himself a stranger in the land, but notice all the men, the sons of Heth, they've all come to mourn with Abraham. He's a stranger in the land, but they've come to mourn the death of his wife. Obviously, he had a good impression on the people, and I think you see an example of that right here. Lastly, I want to say one more thing, which is this field that he buys is Hebron. It's right there at the same place where the trees were, where the terebinth trees were, where he had worshiped the Lord in Genesis chapter 13 when God had reestablished the promise of the son, and God had made good on that promise. And Abraham, before Sarah had passed, Abraham had Isaac. And so God had made good on his promise. Abraham buys a field right there, right where he's been worshiping the Lord, and the Lord's been speaking with him. And the patriarchs from this point forward, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, they're all going to be buried here in the cave of Machpelah. All the patriarchs are going to be there in this cave after Abraham purchases it. That's where the family will be taken to be buried. And so there's this legacy there in this cave where all the patriarchs want to go to be buried, and even Joseph takes his father Jacob, he takes his remains there and buries him in the cave, just like the rest of it, just like Isaac and just like Abraham and just like Sarah. And so this was a pretty important cave. And so today I just want to end with this. I want us to make sure that we're living our lives in such a way that others can see the Lord in us. And not just see the Lord in us, but they can see the Lord working in our lives, and that they would want to join the Lord. They'd want to join what we have. We should always be ready to give an account for the joy that is within us. All right, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I will see you tomorrow with Genesis chapter 24.